And I reached out to all of these women that I saw were sales leaders, cold emails. And I was like, it looks like you're in sales. Would you talk on this panel? And they're like, yeah, because they're not usually tapped to talk about sales.
Yeah.
You know, Black women aren't tapped to talk about this. So it actually hasn't been that difficult for me to source Black women to talk about being Black in sales because they're just waiting to talk about it. Just like I was saying, I have never done a podcast with other Black women. So the moment Aries was like, let's do it, I'm like, I'm waiting to do this. So
hello and welcome to the Bold Black Girls podcast. I'm Aries.
And I'm Kim.
And today we are back. You know, last month we celebrated Black men. We had 3 episodes with all Black men that are doing big things. And we really wanted to just highlight them, amplify them, all that. And so this month we are back with our Bold Black Girl of the Month episode. And this month we have Chantel George, who I met through Sistas in Sales, but we're going to let her introduce herself. She has so much going on in her world that that's just one of the areas. So we're super excited to have you on the Bold Black Girls podcast.
Welcome, Chantel.
thank you.
Yes, we're super excited about this.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. The sister energy.
Yeah, sister energy for sure. Tell us a little bit about yourself, a brief intro.
Okay. So I'm Chantel George. I am in New York City. And as far as an intro goes, I'm the CEO and founder of Sistas in Sales, which is a global organization for women of color in sales. And I am super passionate to be doing that work. It is what consumes me, for better or for worse. So I'm really excited to talk to you guys about that.
Yes. And I was just talking to you about how I found Sistas in Sales, which Kim, now everybody on the podcast knows, like me and Kim, we network all the time. We're always at networking events back in the normal days.
Pre-pandemic. I was just going to say pre-pandemic.
Yeah. Back in the normal days. But even now that we're kind of in this new virtual world, we have found a bunch of things to, like, we'll send each other links all the time. Like, okay, here's this going on.
Join this
Black Enterprise,
yes.
Salesforce, like different companies that's been really highlighting different things. And so when I started my role at the company I'm at now, it was my first sales role. And she happened to come across an event you all were having, which actually was the summit.
Yeah.
And so she said, you probably already know about this, but whatever. I was like, I did not. But now I'm about to sign up and find out what's going on. So I'm super glad. And now, a year later, here we are. And
full
now
circle.
Yeah, exactly. So it's all good. So yeah, so talk to us. Okay, so we got so many questions. I was like, I have so much stuff.
Let's start off with sales. How did you get into sales? And maybe go a little bit into your background about your childhood, because a lot of times you look back into things you did as a child that inspires you for your passion and in your career. So I love to hear that.
Okay. I did not think or desire to be in sales growing up. That's the truth. Because I didn't understand what it was. The only thing that I knew was as a Caribbean or first generation Caribbean woman, that you should be a doctor, you should be a lawyer, sacrifices were made for you to come here. And so we expect you to fulfill that to the highest degree. And so I thought I was going to be a lawyer, and that is what I prepared myself to be. That's the identity that I thought I had to be, but business was happening all around me. And so I got an introduction to business. So for example, in high school, I noticed that folks needed to get their hair done. Like girls wanted to get their hair done. They need to get their hair done for the prom. They need to get their hair done for all different types of things. And I taught myself how to do hair so that I could charge them to do the hair for the prom. And because I saw that like all around me, I'm from the Bronx, New York. It's a very in the area that I grew up in, a Caribbean area, folks are constantly kind of bringing village tactics here, bartering for things. If one person can fix a roof and the other person can, I don't know, garden, they would switch services all the time. And so I had all of that, in me. And so I just brought that with me throughout my life. But ultimately, it became apparent that I wanted to be in business. And then I started to realize I had a knack for sales. But this happened later in my life. And I think that it's important, I don't know, for me to reflect on it too, to be like, maybe there are just some things that are just naturally in you that come out much later, and then you find a word for it.
Exactly.
So that's how it happened with me.
I like that.
It's in you and you don't realize it sometimes. Yeah. Said until later in life.
Because I like people used to tell me that I should go into sales all the time. And same like you, I didn't understand. I was like, you gotta have a quota. All I knew was quotas, and it just sounded negative in my mind. Yep. I would have been doing this probably 15 years ago if I would have known more about it. And just in this little bit of time that I've been doing this, which now we're at a year and a half or so.
Yes. And she has the personality, right? And I've taken a personality test before about 2 years ago. And the lady was like, you need to be in sales. I avoided because I know that sales is, like you said, quotas. And sometimes it can be stressful just depending on what you're selling. So I want to know, how did you even get started into sales? Because you said it seems like it came later in life.
Okay. So I thought I was going to do the lawyer thing. Went to college. Actually, let me take one step back.
Okay.
I thought I wanted to also be in film. I know that sounds very different, but I was fascinated about being an actress. I was fascinated about being on stage and fascinated about theater. So I did take a side step into conservatory where I was there for 3 years. And then when that was all said and done, I was like, okay, what am I going to really do to make money? And so I came back to the lawyer track. And then from there, I was in my bed applying for jobs, looking for something to do for the summer. And I came across a job at Yelp, and it was on Craigslist, and then I applied for it. And they ended up calling me when I was pretty much like napping or like resting between classes. And they were like, oh, we want to hire you for the first graduating class, like when you're graduated. And I was like, okay, sure. So I went there with a temporary mindset. I'm just going to go there, make dials, gamify it. And I did gamify it. Like I knew I was like challenging. I was in a race with myself. I was like, I'm going to make 100 more dials more than everyone. I'm going to talk to more people than everyone. But just because it made me feel good to have metric-based goals. I didn't realize that, again, that was the making of being in sales. You have to be attracted to metric-based goals. And so I ended up staying there for 4 years. And then on the 4th year, I started to explore, well, I've been here for 4 years. I like knowing what my outputs and inputs are. I like knowing how I can make money at the end of every month, and I like putting my finger to it. I guess I'm staying in this career, it's very straightforward. And it, again, was more of what I had been raised around. There was also a ton of predictability in it. So we talk about quotas, but I don't see it as unpredictable. I actually see it as quite predictable. I know what I need to do. I know the formula to get what I need. And I find comfort in that more so than fear. So I just think it grew in me, like I mentioned, but really in sales, especially your first sales job, if you get your first sales job and you wake up and you've been there for 5 years, you're just meant to be there. That's just
exactly
what it is.
Because like you said, I think for people who it is predictable, like, in the beginning of the year, you already forecasted out what the year is going to look like and what do I need to do to make the rest of the year look the other way that I want. And you can say, oh, when I do this, this happens and I'm rewarded for it. So if you like rewards, you like to get those, bonuses and commission
compensated
checks, then you're going to love it,
Also, if you know yourself,
yes,
you have to really know yourself, like in a way that I don't know if most careers have this. Like, you have to know when you're being lazy.
Yes.
You have to know when you're not doing 100%. Like, you just know because the results show out. Like, for example, the top of a quarter, if I'm not putting the prospecting work in, if I'm not doing all the outbounding, I already know what the end of the quarter is going to look like. It's not a surprise. So, you have to have those heart-to-hearts with yourself sometimes and be like, you have to keep going. You're going to regret it if you don't. And that's hard. because not a lot of careers require that type of self-awareness.
Yeah, because you can kind of, float along in certain roles where you're not necessarily producing a lot and just kind of go under the radar. And this is not that. Like, it's going to show on their ranking, and all that. And so, what do you feel like are kind of those other key skill sets that you need to have, like, to really do well, like in a sales role? Because I know that, like, one of the ones that I would throw out there is like being able to hear no a lot. Because if you're, getting ghosted and rejected is kind of a part of it as well. So what do you think of other things?
It can't be about you, like, ever. You're here to solve the person's problem. And the moment that you make it personal or bring your own desires into it, the person can sense it. The scales have been tipped. Now solving this problem is more beneficial for you than it is beneficial for them.
Right.
And I feel like that was a big thing for me. Especially when I started working with local businesses. Like, I got my stripes calling small businesses and asking them to advertise. And I had to make it about them. How does this business affect your life? What is this business doing for your family? And take myself out of the equation, as much as also, like, even thinking about, like, where you're at in the month. Like, I had to be that patient with someone, even though it's the last day of the month. Yeah. And, maybe my job is even on the line, and maybe, like, my, who knows, but I can't be like, all right, you got to sign up. I have to be like, well, tell me more about why what this means to you, and be so patient and caring. And it requires such a high level of care that I think that most people don't realize, and the ones that are selling based upon their own needs, those are the people that give this profession a bad rap.
Yeah, that's when you can feel like somebody's trying, like, calm down, like,
you're trying to take advantage.
Like, you're thirsty. This is not, I feel like you're not looking out for my best interest at this point. You're just trying to get these numbers in. You can feel that, like, and I definitely agree with you on that.
It sounds like also you have to have a high level of emotional intelligence, because you realize, okay, I had to make it not about me, because a lot of times, just even in relationships with people make things about themselves and not thinking about, okay, what about the other person?
Yep. That's so true.
So tell me this. I mean, I want to talk about Sister in Sales and what was the catalyst behind creating it? Because I have a daughter who is 21 and I'm encouraging her to go in sales. And I know there aren't a lot of Black women in sales. So once you tell us about what was your catalyst behind starting that, I would love for you to kind of dig deeper in terms of what would you tell a young Black child, a young Black female, or just person who's interested in getting into sales? Where do they start?
I'm going to use what we just talked about and dovetail into this. So from growing a community, especially a community that turns into a company, it cannot be about you at all. It's like, what does the community need to thrive? What can I do for this community to feel connected with one another? And that was the basis of how I started this organization. Like, our first meetup was a dinner, 10 women in New York, in Harlem, actually. And like, I put together like this dinner for them. I did like a branded menu. I had my sorority sister like design it. We did like tablecloth, flowers, gift bags. And I was like, this is my ode to you. I just want to know if you like this. Would you come back again? And then I had a whole list of questions that I wanted to ask them because I wanted to get to know them. But then I took a step back and they were all just loving each other. I mean, like, they had never met each other before, but they were just opening up about their jobs, opening up about, how they felt alone in their careers. And I was just like, oh, there's something going on. There's like a magic happening. And it was that moment that I said I needed to do this more. And then 4 years later, here we are. But, again, the give and take. I wanted to get all the information from here. You could easily take this and turn into a focus group, or you could just let people like love on each other and feel at peace and feel safe. So that's what happened. And in terms of my advice for a woman who wants to be in sales, especially 21, I just think that I love as a woman to be able to command my own future. And that is what having knowledge in sales can do for you, because whether you work in the profession or you dip your toe in and you take that to another function, you're in control. If someone says no, someone else is going to say yes. And that's very liberating. And I would want every young woman to feel that way.
Wow. Yeah, that's deep.
Awesome.
I mean, I think that's something. Listen, when I started really learning what sales was, I'm like, people in the hood need to know about that. Like, if you can sell drugs, you can sell technology, okay? And you do a great job. Because you don't know everything about those drugs. You're
just selling it to them. Exactly. Right? You don't know the impact it's going to, you know it's going to
They have skills,
good.
though. Exactly. Like, people out here, I have met some people, I'll be like, they would totally get me. Like, just because they got the emotional intelligence, they know how to sell, they got they're tapping into your, what they have read about your personality. And so, I mean, I just think it's one of those things that is super liberating. Mm-hmm. But you mentioned, kind of you started it as 10 women at this dinner. And then what happened the next year?
Yeah,
how did you
this evolve?
Because this is not what that was. When I came to the summit, it was a whole different program. So how did we get from there to where we are?
Okay, so I remember like packing up, the night's over. I'm like packing up all my things, putting in the car to go back to my apartment. And I'm texting my sorority sister. And I'm like, yeah, well, that was great. I'm going to get ready for the next one. And she goes, the next one? I'm like, yeah, we're good. This is done. This is done. I just felt energized by everyone else's energy. And so I went to a networking event like you ladies were talking about before, and I ran into a woman who worked at Salesforce. And I was telling her about it. And she's like, oh, where are you going to host the next one? And I was like, I don't know, because I put up all my money, all my resources for the first one. And she's like, well, Salesforce would host you. And so that was our first actual like open event, was at Salesforce about 3 months later, 2-3 months later. And I reached out to all of these women that I saw were sales leaders, cold emails. And I was like, it looks like you're in sales. Would you talk on this panel? And they're like, yeah, because they're not usually tapped to talk about sales. Yeah. Black women aren't tapped to talk about this. So it actually hasn't been that difficult for me to source Black women to talk about being Black in sales, because they're just waiting to talk about it. Just like I was saying, I have never done a podcast with other Black women. So the moment Harry's was like, let's do it, I'm like, I'm waiting to do this. So
that's so crazy.
That is absolutely crazy. But it goes to show what we don't know about sales, right? And how it can be life-changing.
Yes.
And it's so many industries that sales covers. It's a plethora of industries. It's not just one thing. So there's so many connecting points.
Exactly. In fact, the panel, so the first event had 2 panels. One was technology and the other one was non-technology. So women who were even like Mary Kay professionals, or were professionals at manufacturing, and and just exposing women to other industries. Because that's the other thing. Once you have a skill set, you could do anything, go anywhere, work at any company. And I just wanted women to feel like they had the same kind of access, because I see so many times living in the Bronx, sometimes I take the Metro North into the city. So the Metro North is like the commuter rail, call it the bougie rail. You've got that and you've got the subway. If you take the commuter rail, it's like 30 minutes to get into the city. If you take the subway, it's like an hour and a half from where I live. And I've seen white men meet each other for the first time, exchange contact information, damn near interview each other, on the train, and, walk away with a solid business connection. And I'm just like, well, that is so great. Look at all that access. And I want our people to have that kind of access. And that's the other thing that I am so proud of when it comes to this community. You can't say you don't know someone at XY company in sales as if you're in our community. You can't say you don't know how to get into, this industry as long as you're in our community. There is access for every woman. I am so proud of that more than anything else.
I am too. I think, we always talk about the catalyst for us starting this podcast, and having the conversations, and the fact that these women now have a place to have the conversations. Because I remember just coming in very, green, and I'm listening to these, panels and the sessions and, the side sessions and all that. Yeah. And I was like, okay, that's what I'm dealing with. I didn't know. Like, this is normal as an entry, new person into this, and just learning and building those relationships. I came away from that summit. That first time I came to the event, I probably had 15 new LinkedIn connections from being in the chat, from reaching out to people. Hey, I'm listening to you right now on the panel. Like, that's how I roll, like on the virtual networking. But I really have made some good contacts through this community. So I definitely would encourage anybody who's thinking about sales to definitely join in the Slack group is lit. So yeah. So how would you say everything that happened last year affected the group? Have you been seeing a lot more people come in to try to support Sistas in Sales because of all the things that went on last year?
I would say business right now is going through a really interesting time. A lot of businesses are trying to recoup their losses from the pandemic. And I feel like they're struggling with how to prioritize it. They're like, we want to recoup our losses, but we also want to hire diverse people. And maybe if Sis can handle both, recoup your losses, and also, it could be a Black woman selling. And I feel like companies are, and I don't know everyone's motives, but I feel like the most of them that support us are looking for that. And I welcome that because it means more opportunities for our women. But it's been exploding. So this is probably our best year yet this year, in terms of sponsor help, in terms of like community growth, all of the above this year for sure. We want to get 3,000 women here in the summit. That's double what we had last year. We are aspiring to get 40 sponsors to help us. That would also be double what we had last year. And I'm making all these audacious goals because I feel like it's possible. I mean, I'm like,
well, you wouldn't be a saleswoman if you didn't think it was possible.
I was just going to say, you're very metric based. So like, you're like double last year, right? And I will say, Aries has sung your high praise. This is about Sistas in Sales and the impact that you all have had. Can you talk a little bit about the things that you all provide? Because she shared, there's a
the monthly event.
Yeah, monthly events. So can you share about monthly events and any additional events that you all offer for women that are in sales to support them in their roles?
Oh, and I do I'm in the 90-day challenge as well for the mental health, the group therapy.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. All of that. Basically, I model it off of what is going on in my life. I know other women need this. So like for monthly events, I needed to be connected to more companies. That's like the best way that you can ensure I think it's connected to your mental health as well, because in sales, there's always a fear of, losing your job because your job is metrics based. But if you know that you have connections to 5 or 6 recruiters, it's not as scary anymore. It's like, okay, if this doesn't work out, I have this other place to go. I have this other place to go, and I wanted to provide that safety net. So those monthly events provide that. You never have to feel like I'm just so happy to be here. Well, for positive or negative. I don't want women to stay in roles that they feel like they can't grow in and are just there because no one else will hire them. I also don't want women to feel like if they don't hit their numbers or whatever, they'll be out there in the dark. So every month we have another company that comes and does a panel discussion and hiring sessions after. And so from the top of the year, we've had Experian, we've had SAP, we've had Data Miner, we've had all of DoorDash. Yep. And now this month is Warner Media. And, if you've been following along, you'll see that we have all these different women on the panel. And this month we have Aries moderating us and has been around since last year. And I was waiting for the right opportunity to be like, okay, Aries has to speak, has to moderate. What better way than someone who's been in the community, who knows, what we're trying to accomplish. So that's one. And it's free. It's free for the women to go to meet recruiters, to meet employees at these businesses. Secondarily, we put together a mental health cohort that's been going on. And Aries has been in that too. And I hope that you found that valuable.
Yes, with Tia Brown. Mm-hmm. And it's just, she gets it. Oh my gosh. It's just like, we will be answering a question and she's like, so let's explore that. I'll be like, no, I don't want to explore. But it's so good. I mean, I think I know Kim's company did a group therapy thing. And I'm like, that is really helpful because you get to hear other people, obviously having your own therapist for your deeper things. Yeah. But that is really big because you get to hear other people's stories and you're like, oh, wow, okay, I'm not alone. And it's just super helpful.
Yeah, I'm super happy about that too. And then the summit where we bring everyone together. And so, a lot of this is purely supported by sponsors so that we can make it free for everyone. And so, my pitch is very simple when it comes to them. Like, this is a resource of Black women in sales. Can you support this? And, usually it's yes. And so we're growing and we're pitching and we're building and we're doing it all at the same time. And so, thank you, Aries, for being a part of that from the top of the year to now.
Man, I'm glad you were there for me to be a part of. Like, that's so critical. And I think people who are not connected to some type of community that is in alignment with what they're doing and their purpose and their goals, like, you're missing out on so much. Like, as a woman in tech, I have a tech community. I have having this in my actual role, that I'm in, which I feel like sales. I told her daughter, I'm like, everyone should have a sales job at some point, because you get to see the business, you get to learn so many different skills, and having that support is like critical. I mean, I'm sure you are as well. You got people that you're working with. You learn relationships. You have to build relationships so people can actually help you accomplish the goals that you have at the end of the day. So it's just so much. But yeah, I'm super grateful.
I do have one other question. So you talk about sales. Also think about customer success being connected to sales. Is there a community, like a cohort that you incorporate customer success? So if someone is in customer success, would this be the perfect platform for them to integrate themselves?
Yeah, we have customer success women in the Slack, and it's actually a good idea for us to branch it out now that we're seeing more and more and more women in customer success, because even the function was, I think for me, was somewhat new until a few years ago.
Yes.
And so I was like, okay, this is some, actually we should put something like that in the summit. You just gave me a good idea. So that is what we'll do. We'll have to do something.
Someone your way. The reason I said that is because I actually had a conversation with someone like, hey, it's just tough, right? And if she had that support that Aries is talking about, I feel like she would feel better about, her role and being productive and just meeting her goals, right? She has that support.
Because there's a lot of women in the group in different types of roles. Like this month when we have this event, one of the women, her job is metric. They're all about metrics, and they use metrics to sell. So it's
I will be joining.
I can show you, why you should purchase with us, because your demographic is here. They're doing this, and this is exactly. Like, you have these numbers.
It's so your insight to invoke
it's
action.
Not typical. It's like sales adjacent, so that just like how we talk about tech adjacent.
Yep.
There's a lot of sales adjacent roles as well. And customer success is definitely one of those.
There's customer success, there's sales operations, revenue operations. I mean, there's so much in it. As long as you're comfortable with like dealing with money and just business language. I was talking on another podcast about like being raised, learning the language of business. And some of us have had that and some of us have not. And like an entry point into sales will give you that. They say it's like some organizations, it's like getting an MBA. And I do feel that way. And if your daughter wants to be an entrepreneur, then this is where she has to start. Absolutely. Like in the future,
Well, speaking of that, since I gave you another idea, here's another idea. Like, do you all mentor the younger generation that's coming in that don't know the ropes and, how to navigate getting into sales and kind of sustaining as well?
Yes, but indirectly. So, there are so many like boot camps and mentoring cohorts out there that I feel do an exceptional job because they plug into the university, they plug into the high school system. We found that women who come to us from college are just there to soak in the knowledge and through like watching the conversations happen back and forth, but we haven't created something formal yet. And, part of that is because, our target market are women that are like mid-level, like us, senior level. Here's why. It's not because I don't want to help our youth formally. It's because this is such a grind that when I was a manager, I had to talk people off the ledge many times that weren't sure if they wanted to be in sales. And I feel like you have to come to that moment yourself.
Yes.
Like there's no amount of training I could give for someone to feel like they could be this vulnerable. Yeah, vulnerable, this like open, like they have to want it. They're like, okay, yeah, I could do this. Like I could be a salesperson, and I want them to have that come to Jesus moment and then come find us. And then we'll give you like everything you need because it's so tough, it's so personal. Yeah.
Your demographics, right? That's how companies, that's a specific demographic that you support. So I appreciate that. I guess one of the things I have want to ask also is like, what keeps you in sales? Like, what is your motivating factor that keeps you here and also doing the Sister in Sales?
Okay, my goals have gotten bigger. That's like the short answer. So when I first started in sales, I was making like monthly commissions, and it wasn't a lot of money. It was like a couple $100 to maybe $1,000. And I would say, okay, I'm going to hit my goal and I'm going to buy this shoe. Okay. And that was enough satisfaction for me. Now I'm like, I want to renovate this room. I want to buy this Peloton. Like my goals have
done. And it requires more.
It requires more. And also like, and it doesn't necessarily require more output. It just requires either selling more larger things or selling more complex things so that you can get a lot more out of your energy versus selling smaller things that you have to put so much energy to get a little bit of money. And I think, how it works in our career is that you have to start from selling the low risk things, prove yourself. Then the longer you're in sales, the more you can sell high risk things. And so I'm just, I'm going along with it because I want to see how big of a thing can I sell? Like, what is the you've made it thing, right. And I do feel like that in my day job when I'm representing just one company and I'm representing such a large amount of revenue for this one company. And so it feels like, okay, this is becoming like the big thing, but I'm very motivated to continue climbing up that rank.
That's real because it's life-changing money in sales. I was telling Kim, I'm like,
over here pivoting. I
told her, I was like, okay, like last year I was just scratching and surviving, like trying to figure it out, learn the business, learn the technology, learn all the things. And so this year I'm like, boom, hitting my goal.
Yeah.
And then I started, I said, the fact that it's very strategic because they show you what it's going to look like at the end of the year if you do all the things, right? And I'm like, girl,
the potential,
like you could do stuff with this, and that's what I want as far as us as Black people specifically. Financial freedom can be had. You can be getting money that you have never seen before if you do well. Sales.
Yep. And also it forces you to plan. Like, especially if you are now moving on and selling these complex things, maybe your quota is now over 6 months or over 3 months. And like, you just have more time to plan your own personal goals. Okay, I hit my quota for 2021. I want to buy this at the end of the year. And it doesn't have to be just materialistic. To your point, it could be, I want to save this, for myself. But I think this is the only job where you have 2 salaries. So it's like,
and I've been on the end where I've worked with account executives, and I can see just the quality of life in terms of being able to do different things that normally we wouldn't. People of our Black women or Black people, in general, going on lavish vacations, sitting there paying, writing a check for school, for college, $60K.
Yeah,
damn.
Yeah. So bonus could be your kids' college tuition. Like this is the type of stuff that's possible that I would have never known was possible without being a part of different communities where these conversations are being had. I mean, I think that's the value of what you're doing with Sistas in Sales, and allowing these conversations to happen where you can really learn. And then sometimes we'll get on there and they'll be like, this has been working for me. I do this, I do that. And you'll be like, I'm about to do that tomorrow.
Yeah,
exactly. Like, I'm gonna try that.
I love it. Well,
So if I was a company listening or representing a company that would be a potential, who are the best potential sponsors for Sistas in Sales, and what are some other value adds that they would get?
I feel like progressive companies are flocking to us. tech companies and media companies that are putting diversity at the forefront. I would love to see older companies pay attention to this, because I think they also have something to offer. They have very developed benefit packages. They've got, very prominent name in the industry. When we brought on SAP, I was really happy about that. Those companies are really confusing, and I want our community to know about them. So, ideally, I'd love to make sure we have got a nice mix of like these new hot tech companies that are like diversity first, and also those older companies that have always been like a mystery for us as a community to come forward and support us.
I love that. And I'm sure that is going to be on the way, because at the more that you're doing, I mean, I've just being around for this little bit of time, I've seen so much. What are some things that you need? Like, as a Black woman, you're doing this. You're doing your regular job at a big time tech company, y'all. Y'all can go look her up on LinkedIn. Y'all know what it was. But she's doing big things. So it's like, what are you doing for you? How are you taking care of your self, and mentally, physically, emotionally, all those things? Like, how are you doing that?
Therapy, mentally, number one. When my dad died a couple years ago, when he was starting to pass, I was like, okay, the planner in me knows this is the time to get the therapy together. So I started the therapy while he was starting to deteriorate, because when it finally happened, I don't know if I would have been able to pick up the phone, just real talk, because he was my last parent. So, losing two parents, it changes you. It lit a fire in me for sure, but it definitely changed me. So therapy. The other thing is having more people on the team. I was becoming my own bottleneck for a lot of things. Everything had to come through me. Everything had to come from me. And if I didn't have a good day when my mental health wasn't there, then the business had a bad day. And that wasn't good. So I hired so many people. I have, for the summit, we have got so many volunteers. Like, I'm allowing myself to allow folks to have their own input in the way that this company forms. And I think, I don't know if I was afraid of that before, or if I more just didn't know how to delegate. But delegating has been the most amazing thing I could have learned in the past 12 months. How to delegate and how to let people do what they do. And then I think that the other thing is like giving myself grace, but longer periods of time for grace. I used to say, okay, if I don't have this done by next week, like, it's a failure. Now it's like, if I don't have this done by next month, you know what I mean? Just give it.
Yes, true.
Longer periods of grace. Like, I've already decided 2021 is the building year. 2022 will be this and that. You know what I mean? Like, everything doesn't have to be solved in a weekend. And I feel like I used to operate that way. And so those are the main things that I do to take care of me.
I love it. And that's great. I mean, you already did a lot of the things, and that preparation is super key. I mean, in the business and in our own lives, right? Being able to actually have a vision and go through the steps to see it through. And that goes for your mental, your physical. Like, if you say, hey, I want to lose weight, like I do, I'm like, okay, we gotta start here. It ain't gonna happen overnight. Like, you gotta do things to make it happen. So that's really good that you've done that. And you can see it in what you're putting out there. You can see it. You see people from your team that are doing a lot of things, and I'm like, this is how it's supposed to look. How it's supposed to look.
That's the other thing. I'm like, we gotta show up a certain way. I don't want us to show up in a way for people to be like, and this is why we don't take chances of it.
Exactly. It's not that at all. I'll tell you that for sure.
Well, tell us what's next, and without, kind of giving your future, like telling everything about the plan. Yeah. But like, high level, what's next for Sister in Sales? What do you envision?
Okay, so this is not spilling the beans in any capacity. This is something that we actually announced, but we weren't able to fulfill. We need brand ambassadors doing local meetups in 2022. The pandemic, right? The pandemic just threw us away. threw our in-person plans away. And so we went heavy on the virtual strategy. Now we're back. People need to see other people. They need to be able to talk to other people. And so that's our plan for next year.
I think that would be great. That would be great. Bold Black Girls would love to support that.
I would definitely support that.
We can do some branded meetups, you know, as a part.
I would love that.
That would be great, especially out here in Dallas. I know we have a lot of folks that are in sales that would love that.
Yep.
That's great. Okay, so
is there brothers in sales anywhere?
Don't worry about brothers. Don't worry about these brothers. We're so glad that you were able to do this and make time. Talk about some of the events coming up. Tell them a little bit about the one that we're doing at the end of the month as well.
Yeah, so we have Warner Media, Women of Wonder. Aries is going to be moderating a panel of two very dynamic women at Warner Media, Susie and Marielle. I believe they're both vice presidents of different capacities. And so the idea is they have a long story about their career, I'm sure a little bit about their personal life, and Aries is going to interview them, understand a little bit more about them and how they got to where they were today. And I'm not going to spill all the beans about some of the other things that we found out, crossovers, their previous work history, and so on. But ultimately, I think it's important for us to have a number of role models and a number of women we can look up to for North Stars. And I think Warner Media is coming out the gates with that. So I'm excited about that. Yes. Then after that, we'll meet the Warner Media recruiters through networking and through breakout rooms. And so I'm learning a lot actually about this particular sponsor. I know so many brands are under them, like HBO, what else? Cartoon Network, a whole lot of brands. So I'm excited for them to unpack that. And then after that, we have Gong for the month of August. So Gong is a sales enablement tool, and they've just blown up recently. And then we have the summit, and that'll be like the largest meetup all year. And we have an in-person reception in New York.
Nice.
And then 2 days of virtual programming. And then we're back again with monthly stuff. So we're like busy throughout the end of the year.
Boom, boom, boom. Things are happening. So that event is July the 29th, the Warner Media one.
Yep.
Y'all go over to Sistas and Sales.
Sistas,
TAS in sales.com and check it out. Just go over there and browse around and sign up for something.
Yeah.
What else? Any what do we call it? Calls to action? Anything you want?
Anything?
Any last words you want people to know about you or Sistas and Sales or whatever?
I mean, I would just want to say to anyone who's like interested in starting a community to just do it. Like, I didn't have that much proof that this would be this successful. I only knew that there were maybe 10 other women, in my opinion, in New York that would have thought this was interesting. I had no idea that this would be like a global initiative. So I feel I really want to more so talk to the dreamers out there that are not sure or are hesitant. Just start it, like get people together and then see what happens. And I feel like no other time than the present to take a chance.
I love that. And those are great final words from Chantel George.
Bold Black Girl of the Month.
Bold Black Girl of the Month, because she moved boldly.
With her bold goals, bold metrics.
Exactly.
Everything about you is bold.
Exactly. Including her shirt, if y'all not online. Looking at us on YouTube. Thank you again. We appreciate you. All those who are listening, please make sure you head over to boldblackgirls.com. Pick up your Bold Black Girl mug and whatever else we got on there. I think we got t-shirts, all kind of stuff. Go subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're not watching this, it's a different experience. You know, we appreciate y'all on the audio platform. We understand some of y'all got to listen while you're at work, but we're trying to grow our YouTube channel to 1,000 subscribers. So if you are not subscribed, please go there and subscribe, and we will see y'all next week. Thanks again, Chantel.
Yes, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure.